Welcome, welcome, welcome to another Discourse Fridays. I know it's Wednesday. However, I'm unfortunately having other obligations this Friday, so chances are I may not be able to do a video. So I'm gonna do it now. And today's video is on mask. Why has this become an issue? In the past year, we have seen a rise in a brand new virus called COVID-19. This virus is transferred through the air. This virus is transmittable when you talk. This captures your own spit, so if you have the virus, you don't give it away. So you keep it to yourself. But for some reason, this has become a political statement. This has become do or die. And I know this is the worst year, as 2020 was, but let's talk about it. I'll do this whole live on with a mask on to show it's not that big a deal. I understand it is new, it is uncomfortable, but understand the purpose of it. They've already established with science that it's not entirely for your protection. The concept of wearing a mask is to protect others. That's where the context lies. How are we as a civilization that we do not care about others? And that's telling, right? You have this virus, to all intents and purposes, began in like Wuhan, right? But more or less, it spread around the world. We are not like we were back when the plague happened, right? Because the plague truly affected Europe, and the more you research and study it, it affected the world. It didn't affect North America or the Western Hemisphere, right? But it truly affected the world. You had so many people die because they weren't built up to this new immune system. Now we have something new. Now, why do these viruses happen? A lot of them are what's known as zoonotic diseases. A zoonotic disease is basically a mixture between animals, because animals get sick, because we are animals and we get sick. And now we have pets, and we had cattle, and we have all this other stuff, and birds and bats and bugs and all these things that create this cornucopia of disease and can create something new. In that new virus, it can affect us, which sucks, you know? If this is a new COVID-19 and it was only affecting dogs, it'd be sad, but not everyone has dogs, right? But it affects us. So we should care more about it. Not saying we shouldn't care about the dogs. We definitely protect them as well. But understand that this stuff happens. And it's going to continue to happen for all of time. For as long as we live, diseases will advance, diseases will change, and they will affect us. They will affect us big time. But what can we do to help prevent it? We've learned so much about washing our hands. And I asked openly, at the beginning of this coronavirus, there was a huge campaign about how to wash your hands for 20 seconds. And anyone who's worked in the restaurant industry, we all watched those videos where they tell you to sing happy birthday twice, wash your hands for 20 seconds. Not a lot of other jobs focus you on washing your hands. Not even schools do. And we see how often kids are sick, right? Or teachers are sick because of the kids. So understand, we have to learn how to wash our hands. And I ask you openly, because I'll be honest, I know I've slowed down from 20 seconds ever since I had the vaccine, right? And we'll talk about that later. But how many of you still wash your hands for 20 seconds? It's only been a year, you know? A little over a year. With this whole campaign, and the campaign died out. Everyone's now focusing on wearing masks and doing all this restrictive stuff, but the basis of washing hands should be revisited, right? We have these simple things that truly prove how nasty we are, you know? And it's kind of funny if you think about it. Like, you never really think about washing your hands because it's so like, it's like walking, you know? You just know to do it. And we've all been there where we're in public restrooms and we're washing our hands and we see somebody else who was in the stall next to us or whatever just walk out. And I know I think about it every time, like, Ugh, that's gross. How dare you? And then they go off and go back to the restaurant or back to the theater or whatever they're doing, not washing their hands after using the bathroom. Now magnify that onto a global scale. Magnify that into a global scale where there are countries and communities in these countries who don't have fresh running water, right? Who are more susceptible to diseases and who don't have access to the medical care we often do in the West, or in European civilizations, basically. We don't see that globally, but we have a global economy. So one thing that helped bring that I do enjoy that this virus did bring to light is how connected we truly are. If someone gets sick in China, it can affect somebody in France, who can affect someone in Miami, who can affect someone in Japan, who can affect someone in, like, we're all connected at this point. So we have to start considering ourselves a part of this global economy, global community, right? And it starts with considering yourself a part of your own communities, right? How many of your own communities had access to mask or hand sanitizer, right? Toilet paper, because we saw that run out very quickly at the beginning of the pandemic. And we also saw videos of the dogs who tore up the toilet paper, which was hilarious and good karma for those people who overdid it, leaving others with nothing, right? We have a world where we have so much, but we see how little we truly have. And more importantly, what breaks my heart in the concept of mask is how little empathy we have towards others, right? Like, and I'll be honest, this whole pandemic thing threw me for a loop. I just started a new job where I moved from Puerto Rico. I was working there, and I got a job in New Mexico. So, beginning of January, I was working in Puerto Rico, moved back to the States, or to the mainland, and did a whole road trip from New York all the way down to Florida, where me and my brother went on our first ever cruise. And on the cruise, it was kind of funny because they're all like washy, because you got to wash your hands. When you go to eat, hand sanitizer. They spray your hands. Like, you have to clean yourselves, right? Because you're trapped on this boat with all these people. So they already have these cleaning regulations in place. And then we go down to the Bahamas, double back on the boat, make it back to Florida, and then I continue my drive from, like, Miami, basically, through to New Mexico. And I get there by, like, the beginning of February. Within that month, COVID-19 blew up. And I remember even, like, when I was starting, I was hearing about it, but not really hearing about it. And I'm traveling. I'm traveling not only cross-state, cross-country, right? And to other countries in this short time frame. And thankfully, to my knowledge, I was never sick, right? But when my job closed, I'm grateful that I had a federal job, right? Like, we all got sent home, but we all got paid, right? It was like nothing new. We were still getting paychecks, which is great considering I just moved. So I incurred a lot of expenses after vacation, after moving, after traveling. So I'm grateful for that, and I don't shy away from that reality. But how many of us have been affected or know somebody who's been affected where they lost their job and they're not getting paid? So now we're seeing the systemic issues that lie deep in this capitalistic country, or in this economy, basically. We're seeing when you go home, your money goes away too, but your bills don't stop, right? Even during the pandemic, which we're still in, I still get calls from debt collectors. We're in a pandemic. You owe money, they want the money. There's not a lot of care for you. Rent still due. Phone bills still due. Internet bills still due. Food, how are you going to get food, right? And in a lot of cases, we did see some communities really rise to the challenge. We saw a lot of communities start hosting like food banks and giving out supplies like masks and hand sanitizer and like essentials. Makes you truly question what is essential, right? And then as more information started coming out about the science behind this disease, it was discovered that it is transferring through air, right? Not just it's in the air, but it's in the air we're breathing, because it's coming from within us and going out. So if it's coming out of your nose and out of your mouth, what's one way to prevent that? A mask. Because, and I do a lot of restrictions and stuff, and we could talk about that as well. Some of them were misleading in the messaging, right? It could have been a better advertised, right? Because the concept of wearing a mask, once it became evident that the concept of the mask doesn't help you, because the air stuff could still go in your eyes and whatever, we saw so many people start becoming resistant to mask. Resistant to them. But what was the purpose of a mask? The purpose of a mask in this pandemic that we're still in is so that if you have the virus, you reduce the chances of you giving it to others. If you're talking to somebody and they don't have a mask, and you do, you're signifying that you're protecting them if you have the virus. But you flip it, and the other person's not wearing a mask, and they're talking, they're not showing consideration to you if they have the virus. You know? This is not a disease where you're automatically going to get symptoms. A lot of people went diagnosed with having COVID, but didn't know they had COVID or have any symptoms, right? So, since we're going through this together, because we're all going through this, the concept to me was very humbling, right? I'm going to wear this mask for you, right? Because everyone wants to cling on to the articles or to the scientists or whatever that said it doesn't protect you. Okay, and? Right? It protects you. If it doesn't protect me fully, it helps, right? But it doesn't protect me fully, and it's uncomfortable. I can't breathe right. It's new. What is this? It's covering. I understand it's uncomfortable. And if you're wearing a correct mask, you're breathing your own breath, which again shows you how many people hated or don't brush their teeth, Like, I know when I started wearing like my little N95s, whatever, when I was at work, I enjoyed it. I didn't have to smell anybody's breath. I brush my teeth in the morning. I'm chilling. I smell my great breath all day. I'm fine. I'm happy. So what is it? What is it about this inconvenience that is so surreal that you can't do it, right? And understanding the other side as well. It is new. It's uncomfortable. Okay? But it's for the global economy. It's for others to feel safe. It's for others to feel more comfortable when you're going around, right? And imagine if we all just wore masks for like a little bit all together and no one resisted it, we may have been open since last year, right? But then you have leadership claim and demonstrate not wearing a mask, right? You have leaders demonstrate that they're not going to do it, or openly say they're not wearing it anymore. Openly tell news reporters who ask politely, we will feel more comfortable if you wear a mask. And openly saying, no, not doing that. How rude is that, right? What moral value are you signifying, So to me, it's not necessarily, oh, the government's telling me what to do, oh, blah, 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 blah. No. I want to protect my community. So when I am in public, I will wear a mask. If I'm home by myself, why would I wear a mask? If I order pizza, which I'm grateful I could do at varying points in this pandemic, when I answer the door, I'm going to put a mask on. I'll tell the person to leave it on the thing. It's paid, it's signed, I already tipped you by credit card, you're fine. And I'm over tipping because if they're working, a lot of props. And we start seeing the essentialness of certain jobs. We see how essential grocery workers are. We see how non-essential stockbrokers are. You don't matter. in what's happening right now. We see how important restaurant workers are, right? People who manage food, people who manage even like little things like car mechanics, right? I remember when I did a whole cross-country trip, I needed an oil change. That was in February. I didn't get my oil change until like July, which thankfully it wasn't like month-wise. It was just I drove a bunch of miles. I needed to get my oil changed. But that's not important. What is important is that I can get food. And thankfully, the grocery stores are open. And think about everyone who's working there. And the audacity for people to still go to these grocery stores without a mask. What are you truly signifying? How important do you see yourself versus others? And to me, that's my biggest takeaway with COVID-19. It's not about how much science we know. It's not about how quickly we made a vaccine. It's not about where the virus came from. It's about how inhumane we are to each other. And as uncomfortable as this could be, what's more uncomfortable is seeing your loved ones die. What's more uncomfortable is seeing loved ones die. Seeing friends die. Having family members die. Not being able to go to a funeral for someone you love. To celebrate their life with others that love that person. That's pain. So this small sacrifice you can do can help move this along. Because thankfully, this isn't 1918. This isn't the 1300s or whatever when the Black Plague happened, or the 1400s, right? This is 2021, 2020, right? We were thankfully able to create a vaccine using advanced sciences. And let's go from there. We actually have a vaccine now. And the vaccine can help you. And now let's shift topics into talking about the vaccine. Oh, I got the vaccine. I don't have to wear a mask anymore. No. Again, not how it works. You wear the mask so that if you have the virus, you do not spread it. And it also helps you reduce chance of you getting it slightly. But most importantly, it stops your ability to spread it. We need to contain this, right? And it's another, I guess, like a anecdotal thing is like, for me, I grew up on video games. One of my favorite video games of all time was Resident Evil. It's about an outbreak, right? Starts off with rats instead of bats, right? And didn't, easy on the bats. And we see it infect at one point the entire world. And people often quote zombie movies and I'm ready for the apocalypse. You're gonna get infected. Let's be honest. You're just gonna get bit and just get infected. Because look what you did. You were not able to contain it. You would not survive. Because of how little you've given appreciation or care for others. Because if you get one person sick, if one person's sick, they can get others sick. And then so on and so forth. It's basic mathematics. And now let's continue shifting to the vaccine. So now we have a vaccine. We have several. Some more effective than others, some causing blood clots and all that other stuff. But even think about in retrospect, like think about how they're handling that. You had, in the United States alone, over 500,000 people die of COVID-19. I think you had like under 20 or even under 10 people die from blood clots from a vaccine. And what did they do? They shut it down. They studied it for a couple days, right? Props to that. Because so often we have this ideology of what's right. And, we get it. But the fact that if it affected one person, or let's say 6, they shut the whole thing down until they had more answers. That's amendable. You know what I mean? Because if it affects one of us, it could affect all of us. So the science did what's best, right? To quote that as a reason to not get the vaccine, it's ridiculous, you know? Think of how many things we do every day that affect our lives in the long run and affect others, right? Like even if you're with your partner and you're having sex, right? Oh, I never use condoms. What? You know how many things can happen if you don't use protection or practice safe sex and all that other stuff? It's not just about you. It's not about what makes you comfortable, right? And the hard reality is the reason we don't have polio everywhere, the reason we don't have all these other diseases everywhere is because medicine is advancing. We're learning more about our bodies. We're learning more about the viruses and diseases. And not for nothing, if you're not a doctor, YouTube and even like this video is not going to teach you much. You know, if you want to sit there and read it, yeah, you can find a lot of the answers on the internet, but you can also find a lot of false advertisement. And the thing with science is that it's always evolving. It's always changing, right? So it's not about what you think or what you feel and all this other stuff. Look at the facts, you know? And they are changing. And we're seeing now, because so many of us have decided, yeah, I'm going to do what's best and get the shot, we're opening up. Like in the next 2 weeks, New York and New Jersey are opening up fully. Florida's jumping the gun. But places are reopening. And I would invite you to stay away from the concept of back to normal. Because we see how damaging normal was. How quickly a virus can ravage communities. Especially those that are disenfranchised. We should have been able to come through this together. But we didn't. Now it's up to a majority of us, hopefully, to make it better for the rest of us. And to me, I see that perfectly in line with the mask. As many of us are still wearing them, even after the shot, out of respect for others, out of respect and care for others. So I ask you, what could we have done different? Could we have changed the messaging, right? Right? Because a lot of the messaging I thought was decent. You know, we're all in this together. And we were, but we weren't. Some of us had stockpiles of toilet paper. Some of us didn't have food. And then you get into the whole systemicness of it all, right? How some communities are better off than others, right? And another like tidbit I saw like recently in the concept of this COVID-19, of the vaccine. After this experience, I don't see medicine or healthcare becoming public. I don't at this because of this. Think about it. We have free shots. And you have a good amount of people saying they're not doing it, right? Or they're hesitant. That's free healthcare. That's what it looks like. You want to talk about long lines and long waits? Well, we saw how long it took for everyone to do it, right? And this was like an immediate thing that everyone needed to do so that we can move forward. Not back to normal. There's no normal, but move forward. And we're seeing this great hesitancy blow up across the world, right? Especially in these countries that are getting the shots first. Is this what socialist medicine looks like? Not the fact that it doesn't work or people can't get healthcare. It's the fact that people just won't do it. So it becomes a waste of money. And that's shocking, or that's upsetting. You know what I mean? Because I know, like, for me, I personally don't go to the doctor for the longest time because I didn't have healthcare. And now that I do, well, we have a pandemic, so I'm waiting to make my appointments, and all the appointments I've made have been stalled. So, but I have healthcare now, so I'm willing to go see a doctor. Versus the opposite, which was my reality for years. No healthcare. I'm dislocated my shoulder. I'll fix it. I got a pretty nasty cut. I'll wrap it up. You know? We can do better and we can be better. I understand this is uncomfortable. But it's uncomfortable for you. It's uncomfortable for me. That's fair. You know? And if we just rock it out for a bit longer, it could have gone smoother. At this point, this might just become a part of the wardrobe. And again, props to a lot of people who took advantage of this. I know I personally had a couple friends who were artists and fashion designers make me a couple custom masks because I could use it at work, right? And I got the approval from my boss. Can I wear this? Yep, go ahead. Sweet. Here's money into your pocket for designing this cool thing that fits me comfortably, and I can use it at work. And it'll last me freaking months of work. You know, wear and tear, just like any article of clothing. But there's so many businesses now that do make masks and do make them fashionable and comfortable and effective, right? Is that not capitalism, right? Is that not the free market? So if you're against the free market, if you're against the medicine, if you're like, what are you truly fighting for? What are you truly against? Because what comes about, in my opinion, is that we are truly selfish. If it doesn't benefit me directly or immediately, I don't want to do it. And like, this is the worst. How can we demonstrate that we care for our neighbor? And ironically enough, with the concept of love thy neighbor, it is white male Republican Christians who are leading the charge with not participating in the vaccine, who are not participating in wearing masks. It's ironic because this is literally the embodiment of love thy neighbor, because it's for thy neighbor, it's for the others. And I understand, like, you have your right to choose if you're gonna get the vaccine or not, right? I don't believe personally that we should be told what to do. We should be able to make inquired decisions. And when the science is pointing towards us above 90%, that's an A, you know, in school. Sounds pretty good. But how do we better communicate that message? What do you mean by that? Oh, yeah. It's like they're killing themselves. Yeah. So it's like, if you don't do this, you're going to get sick. And you're going to affect everyone you love. And then what happens next? You're all gone. Like, you're plaguing yourselves. Right? Like, why would you want plague on your own home? That makes no sense. Like, if you love grandma, wear a mask so grandma doesn't get sick. Because you can have it and not show symptoms. Like, I remember, and again, too, in the pandemic, I will admit, I traveled a lot. Like, first of all, I just went cross country and all that stuff. From New Mexico, I traveled all throughout New Mexico. I even went up to Colorado, went through Oklahoma, around Texas, went through Arizona a bunch of times, Nevada, California a bunch, like all throughout California, like even like San Francisco all the way down to LA and San Diego. But I did it all mostly alone, or with people who I knew weren't currently sick, who got tested, right? And everywhere I went, I wear a mask if I'm around other people. A lot of places I went, I was by myself, so yeah, I don't need a mask, but I have it on me if I cross somebody's path. It's a respect for others, right? And again, I'm grateful I never got sick. And I think another harsh reality that I came to terms with in the beginning of this pandemic was, at the time I didn't have health insurance because my insurance didn't kick in until the beginning of this year. So one harsh reality I told myself is, if I get sick, well, that's that. I don't have health insurance. I live in New Mexico. My closest family is in New York. That's it. And that's a harsh reality many people in this country had to come to terms with. And think about how dark and stark, like how dark that is. You have to accept the fact that you can die if this happens. So thankfully you take the precautions so it doesn't happen. And you don't make it stop you from living your life, for the most part. And a lot of people, even in my opinion, definitely went overboard. And many had the means to, many didn't. But how traumatizing that is. Having to tell a 4-year-old to put a mask on and explain it to them. And if a 4-year-old can do it, why can't grown adults do it? Right? Because it's for your protection. And it's for, most importantly, the protection of others. It's sad, truly. It truly is. Like, think of all the tragedies we as a nation have faced, we as a people or a human race have faced across the ages. And look how divided we are on such a simple idea. We have the science to back it up. We're studying it all the time. Yet we're allowing others and influencers to affect our thought process. Like, I'm not going to listen to Pitbull. Mr. Pitbull takes beats from good songs from the past. You know what I mean? It's not even original. Not discrediting his talent, but I'm not going to trust his science because he's not a scientist, you know? And take some responsibility in what you're saying, because how many people listen to you? You know, a lot of these influencers, and who's lining their pockets to say this stuff? You know, even freaking Eddie Griffin broke my heart saying the same thing. Like, he's not getting the show. I'm like, why are you saying that? You know, what are you proving? To question it? And yes, we should question it. Look at the Tuskegee experiments, right? Look how many people of color have been used and abused. Operation Bootstraps over in Puerto Rico. And now we have like another topic that is very important for the next pandemic, because it's going to happen. The government, and more importantly, the science community, has to reinstate trust in the community. And that's something that doesn't get talked about enough. Same thing with police reform, right? So many officers want to talk about how we're not all bad cops. What have you done to better the relationship with the community? You know, like, oh, well, I talked about, well, okay, that's you. What has your precinct done? What has the system done to create trust within the community, right? You want to call yourselves heroes, and in my opinion, in a lot of respects, you are. But last I checked, Spider-Man doesn't kill people. Superman ideally doesn't kill people. You know, if you watch the movies, it's a little different. But in the comic books, that's what makes a hero. Batman does not kill people. So you have to enable trust in the system. You've destroyed that over centuries. And even with the science community, this is your opportunity. The fact that you shut down the Johnson & Johnson vaccine after 6 deaths, that's impressive. It would have been great if it shut down after 1. It would have been even better if none happened, you know? If that stuff got found out in trials. But you have to be able to instill trust in the people. Because right now, we're so divided because we don't trust each other. We don't listen to each other. And by not wearing this, we demonstrate that we don't care for each other. Because we want to focus on what's best for us. Myself, my wife, my life, my kids. That leaves out the rest of the community. If I only care about me, my wife, my kids, I leave out the people my wife interacts with at work. I leave out the the classmates of my kids. I leave out the teachers who I'm entrusting to teach my kids. I'm leaving out the officers who will keep the roads safe so when my wife drives home from work, like we're so bigger than just ourselves. And we have to get out of that mind space because it's not gonna lead us anywhere. We can't do everything on our own, and we have to be able to spread this wealth of information, but also this wealth of caring. We don't care about each other, and that's why this will continue to be the worst unless we take precaution and take steps to move forward. Ultimately, with this mask thing, I did this whole live with the mask. Has it been the most comfortable? No. I'm not dying. I'm not running out of breath. It's not affecting my health negatively. So it's a small sacrifice that we can all take. It's a small sacrifice that costs nothing. It's the same thing as putting on socks. Like, it's not the end of the world. And if your comfortability is more important than the lives of others, think about that. Because honestly, I understand the concept of not trusting the government. I get it. Trust me, I've read a lot of stuff. I wouldn't trust them either. They have to do a lot of stuff to regain my trust. But I'm going to trust the scientists. You know why I'm going to trust the scientists? Because they don't claim to be correct. They claim this is the best evidence. And they keep testing it every day. And entrust science. Entrust others to be scientists. If I wear a mask, every time I've traveled around and I've never gotten sick, pretty good chance it's working. Or I'm getting lucky. Who knows? Build a hypothesis, test it out. You want to walk around without a mask and open up all the schools and everything? Think of how many people you're affecting, how many people you're impacting. So be better. Listen to the scientists and question them as well. And that's the point, because when you question them, you become a scientist. You can't just question them and walk away. You got to pull up with an experiment. You got to test it out. And if you can disprove it, you could freaking win $1 million and a Nobel Prize, But be respectful to others. Be respectful to those in your community. And be respectful to yourself. Because we're not in this alone. We're all in this together. Just wear a mask. It's not that hard.